my wife Rebecca and me were having difficulty getting pregnant. So in the spring of 1994, we started on a journey that would prove to be more difficult than anything we had experienced prior to this time. There were diagnostic tests and varying levels of oral therapy, the possibility of injections with the risk of multiple births should it be successful, and the general frustration and depression that most infertile couples feel when faced with the possibility that God had never intended for them to have their own biological children. The oral therapy, which elevated hormonal levels to 4 times the normal range, didn't cause Rebecca to ovulate. The next step was injections. From the beginning, we had agreed to try therapy up to the point of injections and then reassess if we were to pursue it any further. By fall, the emotional, spiritual, and physical toll of infertility had reached its highest level. 2 OBGYNs from 2 different facilities concurred that my wife had probably never ovulated from her teenage years to the present. We felt as if we had exhausted all hope of having our own children. We hit rock bottom. We cried. Thanksgiving and Christmas left us with a feeling of emptiness. A local social service agency was offering classes for those couples wishing to either foster or adopt children. Rebecca and me signed up. The classes proved to be almost as devastating as infertility itself, since their main thrust was foster care and not adoption, which was our main interest. Even though it was required that prospective foster or adoptive parents attend, we quit the classes in disgust over what we perceived as an invasion of our lives by social workers. We had to prove that we were worthy of adopting a child. Oh, the thoughts that went through our minds. Who checks to see if a 14-year-old girl can prove she's worthy of keeping her baby? Who checks to see if she can financially care for her child? Why is it that she can so easily get pregnant and no one is questioning how good of a parent she might be? Why do we have to go through this while others have it so easy? Mid to late January 1995, it seemed as if, at times, wounds were beginning to heal. Not that we were over being childless, but that we were perhaps making progress dealing with infertility. At this point, we were on the verge of accepting God's plan for us. If He didn't want us to be parents, there was nothing we could do about it, but accept what we felt was His will. There was much prayer being brought before God, asking Him to do a miracle in our lives. Rebecca started having cramps, anticipating her period. A week went by, and she thought it was just taking a little longer this time. The cramps persisted. 2 weeks went by, and I asked her to see our physician about the situation. During this time, we tossed around the idea that maybe God had done what the doctors thought impossible outside of therapy and made us pregnant. We went out and we bought an early pregnancy test. It immediately showed that we were pregnant. To which Rebecca responded, "We can't be pregnant. This isn't supposed to happen to us. It's a faulty test." So we promptly went out that same night and bought 2 more tests. Positive, positive. To which Rebecca said, "We can't be pregnant. All 3 tests are faulty." The following day, our physician confirmed that we were indeed pregnant. God had answered our prayers for a miracle. An ultrasound was performed and showed that the baby had attached itself in a very safe place, high in the uterus. Now, we've all heard stories of couples who were unable to have their own children, and then, out of the blue, they're pregnant. This is not one of those typical stories. I've often referred to this pregnancy as a miracle. It truly is, as you'll soon hear the rest of this incredible story. In 1959, my father and mother, Charles and Virginia Jones, were expecting their 6th child. 8.5 months of gestation had occurred, but she started feeling as if something was terribly wrong. Her feelings were confirmed when 2 weeks later she gave birth to a dead baby girl. My mother had complications. She lost a lot of blood. She almost died. The doctors told my parents that it would be best that they think long and hard before having more children anytime soon. Due to the complications of their last pregnancy, they didn't want her to take the risk of developing problems with another pregnancy and possibly risk her life again. A short 5 months later, I was conceived. What were my parents going to do? Now, I'm strongly pro-life, but if a doctor felt that my wife's life might be in danger due to complications of a previous pregnancy, even I would have considered abortion. I would have in essence condoned the termination of my own existence. I'm so thankful to God that my parents took the risk of giving me life. I don't know if abortion was ever considered. I don't want to know. I will never ask, and I don't want them to tell me, but I feel that they had a very legitimate reason to consider abortion in my case. In 1961, my father and mother-in-law, Ted and Carol Curtis, were married. They became pregnant right away, and in March of 1962, their son Joe was born. The following 4 years, they found themselves unable to get pregnant again. My mother-in-law was concerned that perhaps something had happened in the first pregnancy to cause infertility. She made an appointment with her doctor to see if there was an explanation as to why she hadn't gotten pregnant for so many years. The doctor performed a diagnostic dilation and curettage, or what is commonly known as a D&C. A couple of days had passed, and my mother-in-law called her doctor's office. She explained to him that she had a feeling since her examination that she was pregnant. The doctor told her that he was going to be contacting her because after performing his tests, to his surprise, he learned that she was pregnant. Now, for those unfamiliar with dilation and curettage, a blunt instrument, a curette, which has a ring or a loop on the end of it, is scraped along the sides of the uterus. There are 3 purposes for a D&C. Number 1 is diagnostic, as in my mother-in-law's case. Number 2 is for miscarriages, to remove the baby from the mother. And number 3, it's used as a technique for early-term abortions. My wife Rebecca was already attached to her mother's womb when the curette was scraping her mother's uterus. The curette missed Rebecca. She survived what is sometimes used as an early-term abortion technique. I've told this story many times, but it never ceases to amaze me. I was a legitimate candidate for an abortion. Rebecca survived a technique used in early-term abortions. We have trouble getting pregnant, and we're told by 2 different doctors that Rebecca has never ovulated, and that outside of therapy, we'd probably never have our own children. Then we become pregnant, a true miracle of God without therapy. Now you understand why this isn't one of those typical stories of couples not being able to conceive, then getting pregnant. No, this is a story of a very loving and gracious God who in our cases, mine, Rebecca's, and the unborn child's, God has protected my wife and myself and has been so kind in providing a little miracle who was born to us October 6, 1995, our son, Iain Nathanial. I don't know why God had us go through such a depressing time when dealing with infertility. Maybe it's to share this not-so-typical story with you and serve as a reminder of God's goodness. It's a wonderful example of how God's protecting Rebecca and me from harm while still in the womb and then providing for us, when all seemed hopeless, a baby of our own. From one generation to another, we can see God's loving care.
isn't too extreme. We're both longing for the Lord to make a miracle and form a little baby in the womb, safe, secure inside your room. We thank God for answered prayer and that He's forming you with care, little baby. Little baby, I'm so glad someday soon I'll be your dad. God the Father sent you to us, and He also sent us Jesus. Little baby, you will know that He died to save your soul. We now dedicate you to Him and pray that one day you'll know Him, little baby, little baby, miracle baby, my little baby, little baby, little baby,
The miracle story of Iain Nathanial Jones, including the lullaby Little Baby, was written and recorded in 1995. Copyright 1997 by James Jones. Any unauthorized reproduction of this recording is strictly prohibited.